Parky here again with Laurie. Welcome to another Professionals Under Pressure conference video update. Today, Laurie and I are really happy to have with us Pip Spence, who is the Chief Executive Officer and Director of Aviation Safety of CASA, and who is one of the primary sponsors of our Professionals Under Pressure conference. So welcome, Pip, and thanks so much for taking time from what must be a very, very busy schedule.
Thanks heaps, Parky. Really great to be here. It's important conference, and really pleased that I could be part of it and be talking to you too. So thanks.
Great, and we're really happy to have you sponsoring the conference, which means once again we can make things relatively inexpensive for people. So from myself and the team, thanks so much for your generosity. But more than that, I'm really happy that you've actually given us your time today to share a bit more personally, and that's what this conference is all about, really, is trying to put the humanity back into aviation and concentrate on those things that make us tick as human beings. So thanks so much for that. As you know, we're holding the conference on the 26th of February, which is only in a few short weeks. And as a preparation for that, we're just recording a number of videos, and this will probably be one of the last ones in a series where we've talked to Greg Hood, Dr. Kate Manderson, and a number of others. So thanks very much. So what I might do is I'll just quickly run through Pip's bio for those that may not know her. So Pip commenced as the CEO and Director of Aviation Safety of CASA on the 17th of May 2021. Before joining CASA, Pip was the Chief Operating Officer and Deputy Secretary for the Arts at the Department of Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Communications. Before that, she was the Deputy Secretary for Transport. In this role, Pip was responsible for aviation and airport policy and program matters. Pip has held senior leadership roles across the Australian Public Service, including the Department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet, the then Department of Broadband, Communications and the Digital Economy. And in that role, Pip was closely involved in establishing the National Broadband Network and the associated reform of telecommunications regulations. And can I just say, as a Toowoomba resident with 3 or 4 streaming devices pretty much going right now because of school, we're very happy with NBN. It's been great, actually. So Pip commenced her career in the Department of Transport and Communications, where she worked in a number of aviation-related areas. This included working in the Office of the Minister for Transport. Pip has a Bachelor of Economics from the University of Tasmania and a graduate diploma in economics from the Australian National University. Once again, welcome, Pip, and I will hand over to Laurie, who's going to ask a couple of questions.
Great, thanks very much, Parky, and a very good afternoon to you, Pip. I'd just like to echo Parky's sentiments in saying thank you very much to CASA for your generous sponsorship of this event we're holding in a couple of weeks' time. Pip, it's very much appreciated. We actually had Dr. Kate Manderson on our last little fireside chat, and it was great. I've worked with Kate for the last 10 years or so in the aviation medicine space, and myself along with pilot assistants. So we've already got great synergy there. So it was great to see Kate there. I think Kate is a wonderful asset for this industry. She's very much a doctor that likes to have pilots in the air, not on the ground, and she's very much associated with well-being for the industry as well as the individual. And where I come from, especially, my mantra is well-being equals performance equals safety. For you and the organisation, what prompted you to allow the sponsorship for us?
Thanks, Laurie. First, before answering the question, I just want to echo your comments about Kate, because she's been such an asset to the organisation, and really the way that she's engaging with industry in an area which touches everyone in the aviation community, our AvMed system. It's wonderful having Kate on deck and engaging with everyone. Back to your question though, look, I think we've got a real responsibility in CASA, not just as the regulator, but as an important part of the aviation community. And conferences like the one that you're responsible for plays a really important role in terms of getting people to focus on human factors. And we see our role as, if we can provide a bit of support to you so that more people are engaging and talking about these issues, we're going to have a safer system. So as a regulator, we don't just need to impose the rules, we need to work within the system, and being able to support these sorts of conferences and seminars really is an important part of how we can actually work with industry rather than just regulate.
Yes, thanks very much, Pip. The second question more relates to the humanity of what we do in aviation. I've been involved in pilot peer support and moreover industry peer support for many years now, and I've formed a very close relationship with CASA during that time as well, especially with AVMED for pilots who have had afflictions with substance use disorder and other mental health issues in the past. Just going on what our friends in New Zealand have done, they've created a wonderful it's called PAN, Pilot Assistance Network or Peer Assistance Network, but it's PAN New Zealand. It's right across the right across the country, from Air New Zealand all the way down to the little local flying school at Ardmore, for example. When when we're faced with issues such as loss and grief in the industry, it's not much of a support mechanism, and it's certainly established yet, and it has been established in airlines like Qantas for many years. But what we'd like to do is see that translated into general aviation and around the flying skills and so forth. So, from your point of view, and the regulator, how do you view this?
Laurie, it's a really great question, and the concept of actually having a clearer network that'll actually allow people to talk and share their experiences and just make sure that they've got the support they need is something that I haven't actually seen that the PAN New Zealand, so I'd be really keen to talk to the team here about how it works and whether it's something that we could look at here. I guess I was when I was sort of thinking about the conversation we're going to have, one of the things that I was just sort of kept coming back to is all the things that sort of within CASA, why we're actually coming to work. And, it's very easy to say we want safe skies for all, but what that really translates to is making sure that, people can get on a plane and off a plane, whether they're flying it or flying in it, and they arrive in one piece. And we do all we can to try and avoid deaths, so you avoid those kinds of terrible human costs that goes with the accidents that inevitably do happen, and just making sure that the decisions that we take are always in the back of our mind. That's why we come to work. We don't want to have the safer system because no planes are flying, but we do need to make sure that we're setting up the system to support the best possible outcome for everyone who's flying in our systems. But yeah, your point around when the accident does happen and when there is a fatality, how do we make sure that we've got the right arrangements in place so that people have someone to talk to, have someone who can help them through the grief and the sorrow that comes from this. So I think it's a really good question. I'd really like to work closely within the organisation just to see what we in CASA can do to look at what's happening in New Zealand, and is that something we can work with the aviation industry to introduce in Australia.
Thanks very much, Pip. That's great. Certainly, Herwin's a good friend of mine. I'll get him in touch with us.
that would be great. Yeah, I mean, and it's one of those things we just need to be open to doing things a little bit differently sometimes, and learn from what other people are doing. If it's working in New Zealand, we should be able to make it work here as well.
Thanks very much, Pip. That's great. Thank you. Over to you, Parky.
Yeah, I think Kate was really keen to emphasise, and I'm sure you probably agree, Pip, that if a pilot or anyone else in the aviation industry is really struggling in some way, perhaps to do with anxiety or panic disorder or depression, some of those usual suspects that we're seeing more and more in general society, that hey, this isn't a reason to take your license away. Actually, in fact, we want to see that you can get back to flying. Are you able just to speak into that a little bit more?
Yeah, look, Parky, it's something that probably the very first conversation I had with Kate was around this issue about our job is actually to get you back in the air. And, if your knee's feeling a bit rickety, you go to the doctor and they put a bandage on it, or you might even have to go in and have surgery, or they tell you just, do these exercises and you'll be fine. Well, mental health should be treated in the same way. It's just something that people need to deal with. And then we need to find a way of making sure that pilots aren't scared to raise an issue because they know that the AVMED system is not trying to take the licence away from them. It's just trying to make sure that we find ways of people getting the treatment that they need and then getting them back into the sky. And Kate's very much behind that, and I back her 100%.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I know that on the day of the conference, we're going to have a look in depth at some of those issues. And, early on, unfortunately, we did have, maybe some bad stories that got around industry about what happened to people when they had these issues. But I can attest personally to the fact, having managed some of this stuff in a previous company, that all the recent stories have been good, and in fact have seen pilots in particular get the help they need and then go on to trials if they need to, if medications, and the answer, it isn't always the answer, but then able to get back into the air as soon as possible. So that's been really good, and I'm really keen to sort of, push that message a little bit more and share a bit about that. So
I think that's right. And, it's, as a society, we're getting smarter and better at how we deal with with mental health as it's just another disease that people have to deal with, and there shouldn't be any stigma attached to it.
Yeah.
And if I can add to that too, Parky, it's and Pip, that's a great point. All the work I've done with CASA AVMED over the last 10, 15 years for pilots who've had issues with substance use disorder, for example. And I've lived and worked all around the world, and I've got to know a lot of other different regulators around the place. And I do have to say, hand on heart, that CASA is one of the better regulators in maintaining this. So I think it's really important. And people like Kate I've worked very closely with Kate and the other good doctors there at CASA to help manage this. And I do know for a fact that their mantra is they want pilots in the air, not on the ground. I just want to make a quick point about anxiety too, because I do talk to a lot of pilots at the moment who are very worried about declaring anxiety, and there's no data anywhere in the world, because guess what? Pilots don't want to report it because for that very reason that they're fearful they'll lose their medical. Anxiety is common, and it's a very normal reaction. And the things that have happened to us over the last couple of years, and I can attest to that myself, looking for work at my age, I'm going, wow, so, and having the self-care to manage that, it's, if you've got the self-care techniques to manage anxiety, but having said that, there's always help available, and the doctors, your DAMEs and your GPs and the regulator, they know that anxiety is normal. So it's there's no fear of reprisal in talking about it to your DAME or your GP.
Obviously, Laurie, you're dealing with worst case things, in particular around substance abuse, and if you're saying there's good news stories and there's hope and there's redemption, then I think that's a message that we need to really keep pushing. So, Pip, do you mind? And I only just thought of this question, so feel free just to say no. But I'll let you think about it. I was just going to jump in and say, obviously, the conference is professionals under pressure, and you would be, I think, probably one of the people that are more pressure than anyone. I mean, that job is, I don't think I'm overstating it to say it's one of the most difficult jobs, managing so many different relationships and competing goals and all the rest of it. In fact, my PhD has given me a greater insight, because it's all about safety and how we make meaning of safety in the regulations. But I'd probably just ask, what are your sort of greatest pressures, and then, what do you do to manage them? Do you have any personal strategies or anything? Yeah, is that a question we could ask? Or
yeah, that's fine. Yep. I suppose one of the big things is making sure you don't think you've got to do it by yourself. I mean, I know ultimately the buck stops with me, and I've got to own the decisions that the organisation makes, but I really get a lot of support from the executive team here at CASA, and so making sure you're talking through with people what's going on, and just making sure that you're sharing the issues that are going on, so people sort of see the whole you when you come to work as well. I think that's really important. Yeah, just working as a team, I think really that really helps me, making sure that I've got that sort of support from the people that I work around. And I suppose the other one is just making sure you get a bit of balance in your life as well. So making sure you take the time out to do the things that you do enjoy, so that when you do come to work, you are refreshed and you're bringing your best self into the workplace. So I do worry about how we make decisions, and if we get it wrong, then there can be really terrible consequences. But I also think by for me, it's by engaging both within the organisation and also talking to people in industry as well. So that gives me sort of the confidence that we're going in the right direction.
Yeah, I really resonate with that. And I know, having hung out with a couple of psychologists, I often joke and say, I just didn't need one, I needed two, but they helped me set up the wellness program. But one of the things I learned was that idea of vulnerability, that idea of just being open with one another about, with trusted people, with the things that do bother us, and being able to speak and vent at times. It's so important. And then, having that purpose also, purpose and meaning. If you don't have that, then it's kind of, what are we all here for? So no, I really appreciate those thoughts. Any final words or questions from you, Laurie?
No, I'm all good. Thanks, Sparky. I know Pip's got a very busy schedule and time's up. I just very, very much appreciate you coming and connecting with us today, Pip. It was very beneficial to meet you and hear your views on where we sit in this general aviation space. So thank you.
So if you want to know more and you want to come to a conference where we get a little bit raw and a little bit vulnerable, or you might want to run in the opposite direction, that's fine as well. But if you do want to come and you're brave enough to come, then 26th of February at the Toowoomba City Golf Club. You can register at www.professionalsunderpressure. That's all one word, professionalsunderpressure.com. There's an Eventbrite link there. And this is a conference, as you can see, that's endorsed, supported at the highest level. So we'd love to see you there. I think it's going to be a very special day. So